Good morning. This is Tim Selden. Today is the 18th of June, 2014. This is the Montessori Leadership Online, Montessori Leadership Institute Online, and this is our weekly call-in. This week we were asked by a couple of participants if we could address the issue of business planning. And business planning actually has many different ramifications. There's a plan one develops when one is starting a business from scratch. There's a plan that one develops when one is trying to think strategically about where are we and what are the things that we ought to focus attention on next. And usually that'll come up with more than one specific projects that we're going to focus attention on. And then there's the development of a particular program or project that may not be necessarily strategic in nature. It may be something that's more, let's plot out the tactical. But I invited Alex Glassey from StratPad, which is an online software package that really provides a lot of help to people who are in the process of running businesses and starting businesses. And he's our guest presenter this week. So Alex, welcome.
Well, good morning, Tim. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I'm sitting here in Fort Worth, Texas today, and the weather is lovely. I don't know where you all are, but I hope the weather is lovely where you are as well. So just before I get going, Tim, that was a great introduction, and I've made some notes here. But if there's anyone out there who's got a specific question that they want me to answer by the end of this session, or if they have a specific interest, I wonder if you would let me know that now, and I'll try to make sure to cover it off. And I hear we're a quiet group this morning.
It is a quiet group, so I'll certainly offer a few thoughts myself, Alex. The first is, someone wants to develop a business plan. There are obvious issues with that. You're trying to figure out, one, what is it you have in mind, and how are you going to begin? And they all have learned the idea of checking out the laws, having their head examined for wanting to start a non-public school or a charter school, if that's what they have in mind. They are all beginning to look at the laws that would govern them. They're beginning to think about possible plans about how much money they have available as seed capital. They need to obviously prepare the basic plan that is either going to allow them to feel comfortable about what they're doing from the point of view of getting it written down. Who are we? Who's our competition? What is going to make us unique? What do we need to do in terms of plotting out the cost of operations? What are the steps that we need to do, or the projects or programs that are going to need to be implemented, and so forth. And I discovered your software a year or so ago when I was just using it on an iPad. And I thought, I've seen a lot of resources. In fact, the people in this course have access to all the usual small business administration resources on developing a generic business plan. But I thought that you really have a couple of things you bring to the table. One is you've got a unique piece of software that I really enjoy working with. It's more than just a bunch of templates. The second is you have an insight that I think is interesting in its own right. So I know that one of the things people will want to know about is, what do you think they need to know if they're either starting a new school and they're beginning to lay out their plan and track their progress, or if they're developing a expansion plan or whatever, any project at all, whether it's a new summer camp or an after school program, how would you suggest people do that with a specific focus on the fact that you've got a piece of software designed to help them do it?
Wow. Okay. Well, that's thanks for that, Tim. And just want to make sure that I'm sitting in a hotel room right now with hotel Wi-Fi. I just want to make sure that the audio is coming in clear. Tim, you can hear me okay?
I hear you fine. I assume everyone else can.
Okay,
And
great.
again, this is all being recorded.
Perfect. So thanks for that, Tim. So StratPad is born out of my thinking that business planning is more than just business planning. Business planning is really thinking hard, starting off by thinking hard about what you're trying to achieve, like why are you trying to do what you're trying to do, and then working through from there to make sure that you've got all the steps in mind and that you've covered off all the basics, including right down to cash flow. And so StratPad was born out of that. It starts off by helping you think, and then it walks you through the various pieces you need, producing all the reports that you need in order to get your plan financed, and then to manage your plan right through to completion. So I'm going to start to move through. I'll give you a quick overview, and then we'll walk through a couple of scenarios. You talked about starting a new school or doing an expansion. Along the way, I want you to understand that StratPad it's a pretty rich tool. Pardon me, there's lots in here, but you can use it very simply, or you can use it as you get used to it to drive down and create very, very comprehensive, very, very rich plans indeed. So at the very beginning, we start off with the navigation at the left-hand side, and you can see that if you start at the top and just roll down, start here, we've got a few screens. You've got a few screens here that will just give you a quick introduction. You then go into write your plan, and we walk through those steps. You can then view and print your plan. It brings together two kinds of plans. One is an operational plan, and one is a complete detailed business plan that could be used for a board level and could be used for banks and financing. There are operational reports that just automatically are created. There are financial reports that are just automatically created, and then you can track your progress towards either financial goals and or any other goal that you want. For example, if you're trying to track the number of students, if you're trying to track the quality of your delivery, anything at all that you're trying to track that makes sense, then you can track that there. We're going to start off, because you're educators, we're going to start off here in StratPad U. Whoops. Oh, hold on for just a sec. It logged me out. We're going to go into StratPad U. A lot of people are very familiar with their area of expertise. So if you're a principal or or a teacher, you'll know about starting a school and running a school and teaching, but you may not know about strategy, you may not know about business planning. So there's some resources here that allow you to learn on your own. So this section here, Strategy for Entrepreneurs, gives you 28 very easy to read screens that walk you through the basics, fundamental of strategy. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to encourage you to think strategically. And Tim, you use some of the key words like uniqueness. What is going to make my school unique, in particular in my local community? How am I going to differentiate myself from other schools? What are we going to do that's special and different? If you don't understand financial statements, we have videos that actually will introduce you to what is an income statement, what is a balance sheet, what is a statement of cash flows. These are award-winning videos. They're very short, 3 minutes or less, that cover off these things. And I guarantee you that at the end of the total of 26 minutes of video, you'll have a pretty good understanding of these things. So that's the basics. And there's other videos and other material here, and I encourage you to go through there. Let's start off by just taking a look at an existing plan. So I'll go down to this sample here, and it's not related to a school, but just to give you an idea of what's going on. When you go into write your plan, and I'll wait for the screens to catch up. When you start off with write your plan, what we're going to ask you to do is just to drop down this page. And you can start, you can go as far as you want, or not very far at all, depending on what your objective is. The first thing is just to give it a description. The next thing is to go through 7 pages of discussion. And what we're asking you to do here is just to, we're going to ask you some questions. We just want you to take a few minutes to think through your school or your business. Who is your target customer or client? And give us a paragraph or 2, nothing more than that. What are the key problems or opportunities faced by your customers or clients? So in your particular situation, it may be that locally there's a level of education that's missing or a type of education that's missing in your community. So you need to talk about that. Again, no more than a paragraph or 2. We're not asking you to produce a 120-page business plan document. Now that you've identified who your target customer is and what their issues you're trying to resolve, how do you resolve it? And again, a paragraph or 2. And I won't go through all this in detail because there are another 4 screens here, but you get the point here. Answer the questions. By the way, if you need help, there's help here that's detailed along with videos that will ask you even more questions and help you think through this, this particular page in a little more detail. We then ask you to think through what are you trying to achieve in the next 3 to 6 to 12 months. What is your specific focus? And we ask you to turn that into a 1 or 2 sentence statement that that gives clarity to you, but also gives clarity to your team. So in this particular case, here's a particular deadline date. By this particular date, we will be the region's most innovative design firm. And how are we going to do that? We'll do that by offering the widest range of equipment to the area's engineering firms and manufacturers. So now that you've discussed who you are, what we now ask you to do is to go through and decide to tell us what projects, exactly how are you going to achieve this. And we ask you to do that by defining specific projects. It could be 1 project, it could be 7 or 8 projects, and you can, all these projects will just simply layer on top of each other as you build them. So in this particular case, they've said that they needed to expand their machine shop and add new machines. They're going to start on this date, end on this date, and there are some financial ramifications attached to this. There are upfront costs, there are ongoing costs, and it's going to negatively impact their revenue. They're then going to implement new scheduling and time tracking software. Again, upfront cost, and there's going to be an ongoing cost through the life of this particular project. They're then going to expand their sales and marketing activities, starting at this date, ending this date. Upfront costs, ongoing costs, and of course this should positively affect revenue. By simply doing this, you can now see that a plan has started to come together. There's their discussion. Here's who we are. Here's what we aspire to do. Here's our focus for the next year or so. Here's the discussion that they had talked about. Here are the details of the projects that we have put together. We're going to expand shop and add machines. They've also put in there some specific activity, and there are some other metrics or specific deadlines that they're hoping to achieve. They have specific goals in mind, and we'll go back and we'll show you how to do this. There are specific goals in mind. Average number of days to complete job, they're going to get that down to 4. And then here are the financials: revenue, cost of goods sold, expenses, and contribution. You notice that in this report we don't use the word profit. This is designed for nonprofits as well, so we use the word contribution instead. All right, so I'm showing you this report here to let you know that as you're building, if you go back to write your plan, StratPad remembers exactly where you were. StratPad remembers exactly where you were, so you can go back and forth between any of the reports and writing your plan. Now, if you want to go further, you can actually start to create objectives. So it's great that you've got a project, and it's great that you've got a start date and an end date, and you've recorded the financial stuff, but sometimes you want to go more than just financial stuff. Sometimes the particular project is designed to accomplish something more than just a financial goal. So in this particular case, they want to actually increase billable hours. From a customer or client perspective, they want to actually increase the speed at which jobs get done. And what they've done here is they've said, not only do I want to increase the speed at which jobs get done, but I want to actually have a target value and a target date. So I want the average number of days to complete the job to reach 4 by this particular date. So what you're starting to do now is you're really starting to link your strategic goal, which is to create this fabulous new school in the next 12 months, or create an expansion to some of your curriculum in the next 6 months, or to create an outreach program to parents and community over the next 12 months. So you have an objective, but now you're actually starting to think through right to the operational side. Well, what exactly are we trying to achieve, and how will we know when we're successful? And also, how will we know if we're not successful so that we can take corrective action? Let me go through some of the reports then, in addition to the plans which we've already talked about. So just by working through those things up in Write Your Plan, StratPad creates 14 or 15 additional reports. This strategy map report is, if you're interested in strategy at all, it brings it all together onto one page for you. It shows you what you're trying to achieve here, your strategic statement. It then lists your projects. You can have an unlimited number of projects. And then it shows below that what the various objectives are. And the reason I like this report so much is that it helps to bring your entire team together. People who are working on this particular project are able to see people who are working on this particular project, what they're trying to achieve, and it reminds everybody that we're all working to achieve the same overall strategic objective. I won't go through all of these, but I'll just touch on a couple. The Gantt chart, which we've already seen, shows you in detail the projects, the tasks, and the specific targets or goals that you're trying to achieve. The agendas report, because you've told projects what you're trying to do, when you're trying to achieve it, and who's responsible, and how often you want these things to be reviewed, StratPad can put together a meeting agendas report that tells you when you should have a meeting, what the agenda of that meeting should be, and who should be in that particular meeting. So it just reminds you that you're trying to achieve, you're starting off this project, you want to check the progress of this particular metric. There may be some financial issues that you're trying to achieve. Here, review the monthly financial performance, and that Kim and Mary are the people who are responsible to achieve these. Under financial reports, again, because you've given it some basic numbers, StratPad then creates the complete set of financial statements, income statement, statement of cash flows, balance sheet. This is all integrated. This is all bank ready, and it will show you your revenues, your expenses. We'll also show you how much cash is required and whether there's going to be a cash shortfall. And so you can see here down at the bottom of my statement of cash flows that the cash at the end of the month, if it's a positive number, that's a good thing. It means there's cash left in the bank. If it's a negative number, it means that it's a bad thing, that you don't have sufficient cash to meet your operating requirements. And so as you're building your plan, this gives you a real good insight into how much cash you'll need and allows you to balance whether or not you can afford to do a specific thing. You can then track your progress graphically by using any of the metrics that you've created up above. So we wanted to check to see how well our average daily hours recorded was. We wanted to see how well we were doing with our days to start job. We wanted to see how well our monthly machine hours billed were. So here is the target, and then here's my actuals as we go forward each month. And then here's a trend line that helps me to understand whether or not we're on track to hit that. Now that's a quick overview back to the new school, but I wondered if there were any questions at this point. So I'll just pause for a minute.
I'm not seeing anyone writing a text in the chat panel, so I'm guessing not.
Good. I see that mics are on, so if there's anyone wants to holler something out, I just need a break from talking.
Sure.
All right, let me press on.
So obviously someone can use this. They're building a budget, and they're trying to get that initial sense of the pro forma, of what exactly is going to be involved. And at the very beginning, it's all supposition. They're guesstimating what the cost of housing the facility will be. They're guesstimating what the cost of providing the service will be, which in the case of a school is, all the various staffing that's needed, the equipping of the classrooms, and so forth. And all of this can be done in StratPad, right?
Yes, it can.
And then as reality hits in, it can be adjusted. In other words, we always guess at the beginning it's going to be this, and then you start discovering, well, I budgeted too much here, I budgeted too little there, so forth. In a situation like many of our listeners are facing, they're usually not doing this alone. They've got either a board or a co-director or a partner. There's some sort of collaboration, or they're in a relationship with the Montessori Foundation where they're basically saying to us, can you help us take a look at our business plan? Does StratPad allow for more than one person to have access to it? Can you share your plan, or do you have to print out what you've done thus far?
Tim, it's a great question. And we are now able to share a plan in a couple of different ways. And I'm just going to see if I can find, actually, I'll just talk to it. You can share a plan with as many people as you like, and you can share it in a couple of different ways. You could, if you're working collaboratively on building them, you can share the plan with someone and give them full edit ability so that you and them, whether it be one or two or three other people, can be all working, writing, and adjusting the plan. You can share the plan in a view-only mode so that you can share the plan with, let's say, others so that they can see what's going on, but they can't necessarily adjust the plan. And you can also share just one aspect of the plan. You could actually share just the track your progress section in a view-only mode. So, for example, if you want to share the progress with your board of what's going on, they could have access to all of the information here in the track your progress, but wouldn't be able to adjust things.
As a quick aside, I mean, you designed this originally, as I recall, for both individual entrepreneurs who are founding businesses or running businesses, because it's really got a lot of applications. It can be used for, again, project management and planning. It can be used for normal business planning. But I know that you're also reaching out to a lot of people that are running MBA programs in business schools. How do you see your own product being used best?
Well, we think that there's a lack of appropriate tools and thinking out there in the marketplace. So the thinking about strategy, let's start with there. The thinking about strategy has been historically far too complex. So if you've taken a BCom course or an MBA course, you've taken strategy, and it's as you know, you won't be taught a lot of practical stuff about strategy, a lot of theory. The same thing with business planning is that people are, again, they go through a BCom program or finance course or an MBA program, and they end up being taught 3 months worth of finance and accounting, and they walk out of there not really having a solid sense of how to build a pro forma, a budget for a new school or a new business. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to deliver from the education uh, institutions forward. We're trying to deliver to them a simplified tool that we think is very rich. It doesn't detract from the theory. It embodies the theory, but embodies it in a kind of an on-the-ground, easy-to-use fashion. So we think that we also think that running a business or starting a school is very much like and doing the planning is very much like the peeling back the layers of an onion. We can't expect you to become an expert overnight in all these things, but we can expect you to do a little bit of thinking and to get some of those ideas down. And then we can expect you to start to think about things like housing, staffing, and other things on a simple basis, and then learn and get better at the financial stuff as you go forward. So that's really our approach here. We're also doing work with, and I'll show you this see if it works. We're also doing an integration with Intuit. And Intuit, as you may know, offers QuickBooks software, QuickBooks Online, and then QuickBooks software products. And so that if your school is using Intuit to track your ongoing costs, we will then bring back and present your actual costs versus your actual revenues versus your projected revenues instantly. So what we're trying to do is to get you thinking about your business. We'll do some of the mundane stuff about building these reports and comparing stuff with your actuals.
Well, that's marvelous. I mean, we ourselves, the Montessori Foundation and our lab school, the Newgate School, we use QuickBooks Online because we can access it from anywhere. Our board members can have read-only access, which is in a nonprofit is often very, very important. But the idea that you can tie what's happening in an ongoing business with something like this is really useful. How difficult is it to set that up, Alex?
Well, it's a matter of about 4 clicks, and so I'm having some delays here in my on my Wi-Fi side, but yeah, it's a matter of 4 clicks. You simply set your when you're setting your plan. When you set your plan up right here, you'll simply say there'll be a little button here that says I want to link to my accounting file, and then you click it, and that's about all you have to do. Then as you go back in to track your progress, you'll see that your expenses, revenues, and net contribution are automatically linked to your Intuit file.
Here's a question that may not apply to everybody, but I myself have Intuit login access, and I have 4 different nonprofits that are all using QuickBooks Online, which, by the way, for those of you out there who aren't already running schools, that would be the software that I personally would recommend, not because it's specifically set for schools, it's just really, really easy to use, and it's because it's online, you don't really have the problem of if there's a fire on your desktop, your data is backed up, and I just happen to like it, but that's just me. It also integrates with other software we recommend, like DonorPath, which is one of our strategic partners that helps schools with fundraising, for example. It'll grab certain accounts out of that. So how would StratPad, let's assume that one of our schools has 2 locations now. Let's assume for the minute that for whatever crazy reason, they're keeping separate QuickBooks Online accounts for it. So they've got one login, 2 or more QuickBook accounts that they can access. How does StratPad know which one to use?
That's a great question. So you'll notice here on this little list icon that I have multiple plans. So I've got 3 sample plans, and then I've got 2 QBO Connect plans. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on this sample SMB market focus and just watch this little Intuit icon here. So it disappeared. So StratPad knows because you will link each file directly to a separate QBO, a QuickBooks Online account. So once you set that up, then you can just forget about it. It knows, again, it's back here. This particular plan, I just switched plans. This particular plan knows that it's connected to a specific QuickBooks file. And once you've done it, you set it and forget it. So as you move between your 2 schools, each school will have a separate plan, and each plan can be, if you wish, connected to a separate Intuit QuickBooks Online file.
That leads to another interesting question, Alex. I remember working with so many clients who are trying to set up a school the first time, and they have different scenarios going on. So they'll say, well, if I get this building, I'm going to be able to start off with this many kids, and this is what my monthly costs are going to be. If I get this one, this is what it's going to cost. I'm assuming with the use of StratPad, you can have multiple plans. So they are essentially different scenarios that you can build that have to do with the same entity, the same school, but they're scenario 1, scenario 2.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Uh, Again, going into here to my list of plans, I'll be building a particular plan, and then if I want to make a duplicate of it, so I get my plan to a certain way, it's based on this particular building and these particular assumptions, and then once I'm done that and I like it, and then I say, well, I need to make a duplicate of that, you simply click on this little icon here, and it will make a copy of that particular plan. You can now go in an exact identical copy. You can now go in there and make the adjustments for that particular scenario. So why don't I take you through the creation from the beginning of a new plan, and we'll just show you how this thing comes together, and you can create pro formas. Does that make sense?
I think it's a great idea. And I'll feed out to you a scenario of a small school.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, we're going to start a new school, and we're not going to do a QuickBook Connect because it doesn't exist yet. Okay. So we're starting from scratch. I'm assuming that you would hit new plan.
I need you on my training team, Tim.
There you go.
Right. So I've clicked on new plan.
We're going to call it Montessori School.
Great.
And the name is Montessori School.
Okay.
And we'll say it's in Bradenton, Florida, which is where the Montessori Foundation is.
Sorry, is that Bradenton?
That's fine. Doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And yeah, it's in the USA. And the sector is, I would assume, education or schools.
Okay, let me just pause you there for just a minute, okay?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start to type something, I just wanted to show you that the work that you're doing is immediately being used in the various reports. So that's all I wanted to show you here. So you can be going back and forth between writing your plan and seeing what it looks like at any time.
Great. And I love how I can connect to QuickBooks right away if I want to.
Yep.
Okay.
Beautiful. So why don't we skip over some of the discussion pieces, Tim? I think we've gone through that enough.
Yep.
And instead, because people will know that they've got to do this stuff, and instead, why don't we get into the projects and let's talk about we'll start to build the pro formas here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you had talked about housing, staffing, some other things, right?
Exactly. So why don't we call the project initial plan?
Okay. And what do we want to, in this particular project, what are we trying to do?
Well, wouldn't this be the pro forma for the entire school in its first few years?
Yeah, you can do that. I'm gonna suggest that we break it down a little bit though, just so we can show people how they can break things down, and how there's a layering approach. So, for example, housing seems to me to be something that is it's a distinct thing, right?
It is. It is.
All right. Okay. So why don't we create the housing? We'll just create a project called housing, and we'll leave this responsibility aside for a moment, and we'll say that it's going to start in July 1st. And let's say that we're going to be going out, we can go out a couple of years.
Yep.
So let's say June 30th. All right.
Sounds
Now,
perfect.
yeah. So housing isn't going to affect revenues at all, is it?
No.
It's really going to be an expense.
Yep.
Okay. And so in this particular case, can you give me an example of what the expense might be?
The typical expense for renting something, let's say, is $5,000 a month.
Okay.
Now,
Is
they're
there
probably, yeah,
any
let's
upfront
assume there's,
costs?
yes, let's assume there's upfront. They're going to probably hit you up for, well, it's not unusual to see first and the last month, but let's say it's 1 month, so 5,000 there.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be costs of moving in. They could be added in, but just in terms of the landlord's probably collecting a security deposit and they're going to get monthly rent.
Okay. Great. If we just did this and we went down back into our plan, what you'll start to see is there's a project starting on the July 1st and going out for a couple of years. And we're starting to see that our financials are being built. And these periods are showing, this is a quarterly. And so we know that there's $5,000 a month in rent expense, but there's a first month additional $5,000 of expenses, and showing $20,000 are required in the first quarter.
By the way, can the plan be structured so it's done in a monthly basis as opposed to quarterly?
You got all the questions. What you can now do, so this is a summary business plan, but
Mm-hmm.
you can drill down into, you can either see it in a detailed business plan, or you can drill down and to see your financial reports on a month-by-month basis. And so let's click on the income statement monthly, and you can see now, starting in July 1st and going forward up to 8 years of month-by-month costs. Okay,
Yep.
let's go back to write your plan.
By the way, going back to write the plan, I noticed you had the monthly adjustment. Let's assume there's not a normal monthly adjustment, but let's say in year two, the rent bumps up to 5,000 and $5,100.
Right. So let me see how we would do that. In that particular case, you'd have to create how would we do it? Yeah, there's a way to do it. It's not quite as simple as just putting in a percentage here. You might have to create two projects, one for the first year and then one for the second year.
Mm-hmm. I would do it. Okay, so
Okay.
for the moment, let's leave it stable.
Yeah. Okay. And so now we want to talk about staffing. That's another cost, right?
I want to draw people's attention to a couple of things here that I'm looking at. Under
Sure.
the one time and monthly that everyone should be able to see on the screen, it's asking how it's going to affect revenues. Well, the answer is it isn't. Even though in reality it is, it's a cost, but it's not something that affects revenues. Discounts would affect revenue. Cost of goods sold. Well, it's going to affect cost of goods sold, but the reality is that's more meant for the manufacturing or retail business. Um, Is it a general and administrative expense? The answer is yeah, it's generally, this is what would be called an overall general cost of operation. You're providing of utilities and a building, so forth. Research and development, that's not going to apply to a school. Sales and marketing, that's not going to apply, at least here for this project, which is about your facilities. I just wanted to point that out because people that haven't gone to business school, that may not be so obvious.
Great. And if you need to have more information about these things, remember that StratPad U has some great videos on explaining these things. And then you can also dig into the help screen, which has, in this particular screen, has lots of additional help to explain these terms and how they're used. So why don't we go in and we talk about staffing?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to create another project here, and we're going to call it staffing. So I just clicked on the plus sign, and we're going to call it staffing. And let's choose the same dates. Actually, let's just choose the first year, because perhaps first year staffing, perhaps your staffing is going to go up as the school grows in the second year. So let's do staffing in the first year.
Let's make it more like what's typically going to happen in school. Assume that the staff is going to show up for the first time for the purpose of the exercise. Let's say it's going to show up in September.
Great. Oops. September 1st. Great.
The point I'm trying to make for the students here is quite often you're renting your space before there's any money coming in and before you're paying your teachers. You may have somebody who's working, but probably that's going to be administrative staffing.
Great.
Okay.
All
I'm
right, so
assuming we
so
would treat this what as a general and administrative expense, or is that a cost of goods sold?
well, it depends on how you treat it, how your accountant tells you to treat it.
Well, obviously, as you sell more goods, otherwise have more kids, you're going to have more staff, but it's not a simple one-to-one correspondence. It's actually done in steps, depending on the age level of the child and the local law. So for the moment, why don't we say that the enrollment is going to be fixed, at least for the first year, and our expenses are going to be fixed for the first year, because this really is just a planning budget.
Great.
Okay? So the question there is, what is it going to be? And here we're not seeing the actual drilling down of how would you figure out what your salaries are going to be. So for the moment, I've given the group the scenario of a $5,000 a month facility. Let's assuming that what that got them was a facility that will hold 75 children. Let's assume that those 75 children will break down to two groups of give or take about 30 children in the 3, 4, and 5-year-old level, because this is a Montessori course. So for that group, for each group of children, you've got a head teacher and you've got an assistant. Now, everyone out there is going to pay a different price. So I'm going to guesstimate what the cost would be in typical. Now, individuals can keep their costs down by hiring their daughter, their sister, their best friend who's willing to work for free. Lots of people do lots of things. But if you're paying in the open market, probably your head teacher is going to cost you $40,000 a year. So let's figure that out on a monthly basis. Your school year is typically going to be September to June in much of the world. There's some people who are going to pay their people for 10 months work over 12 months time. That's what we do at our lab school. But for the moment, let's assume it's going to be 10 months of work and you're going to pay them in 10 installments. So we're suggesting that the lead teacher is going to cost $40,000. So we almost need a separate spreadsheet to figure out what our costs are going to be, right? So we're going to have 2 teachers being paid $40,000, and then we're going to have 2 assistants that are probably going to be paid, let's be fairly, let's say they're getting paid $20,000. That's probably lower than what you're going to get away with without feeling guilty, but you might do that. So at this point, our cost for each classroom is $60,000 a year. Yeah, you know what? That's too low. Let's say $65,000 a year per classroom. We had 2 classrooms that had that level of staffing. Plus, we have toddlers. The toddlers are probably, you're going to pay your teachers less than you're paying your main teachers. So let's assume your cost for that classroom is going to be $10,000 less. So we had 60 and 60, or what did I say, 65 and 65. So now we have
Yep.
130, and let's add on 50,000 more. And so now we're at $180,000 in gross staff salaries. That does not include a secretary. It does not include your salary or anyone else, just teachers. And so that's a question of whether you'd put every single thing in here. For the moment, let's call this just the staffing for the teachers. So we got 180,000 for the year, and we're paying it in 10 months, so it's $18,000 a month of payroll. Hopefully at this point everyone is choking up, because in the real world this is what it really feels like. And many schools will start with just a single classroom, and of course if that's the case, they're going to have a lower rent. What I've described is a 75 student class or school in year 1, which is pretty realistic. Most schools should be able to hit somewhere between 50 and 75 students in year 1. So there you go. Now, Alex, what would your advice be if we were going to talk about administrative? That would really be in the same place, right?
Yeah, anything that isn't research and development or sales and marketing,
Why don't we
cost
do
of goods
this?
sold falls into G&A.
Let's change the name of the project to classroom staffing first year. Because I think
Right.
administrators are going to think in terms of classroom versus any other expense. Okay,
Right.
so I think that one's done. We'll need a new
Right.
project
And
for the
again,
event.
just to sure, and just again to show people, what you want to do here is get back into your financial reports at any time. Click on your statement of cash flows, and this is where your Adam's apple will do the big up and down, because you're seeing that your cash at the end is going increasingly negative. But you're now getting a sense. You can see that as you add these things in, they're instantly being calculated for you on your statement of cash flows. And now we can go back to writing your plan.
Yeah, why don't we do the income side and let's see what that feels like.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. That's the happy side.
Hopefully everyone's having a good time with this. All right, so yeah, income's going to start coming in September, which means you've had 2 months, very conservative, of dead time, no income.
And when is it going to go to? Does income come in through the school year?
Let's do it through the school year, and that's a different issue that I would have with them in further conversations about budgeting, of how do you keep money coming in during the summer. But for 10 months, let's assume we had 10 months worth of salaries. Let's assume we have 10 months worth of income. So now we have
Okay.
monthly income. For the moment, let's pretend we're going to get away with having $1,000 a month for 10 months be our income. In much of the country, the actual amount they can get away with charging will be less. In
Sorry,
other parts of the country, be higher.
your audio. Can you say it again, Tim? Because your
Sure,
audio went garbled.
sure. In much of the country, the amount you can charge will be $1,000 a month or more. In other parts of the country, it'll be less. And this is where it all gets tricky. And you simply adjust how much you can afford to pay for rent and for salaries according to how much you can get out of people in terms of their ability to afford private school tuition. For the moment, let's assume it's a monthly $1,000. And in this case, we need to say how many children are paying that. Again, there's probably a separate spreadsheet that you built that calculates out your projection of how much you think you're going to get a month. So for the moment, let's pretend we have 75 children and they're paying $1,000 a month. So 75,000 a month is the number we're going to put in there.
Great.
Okay. And let's take a look at what that did to our bottom line.
All right. I think it'll help. So what we're showing here is that, let me go make one small adjustment. What it's showing here is that the money is actually going into accounts receivable. In other words, that people are paying 30 days later. And I think that's not what you want. You want people to
Correct.
pay in that month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in Write Your Plan, down in Loans, Assets, and Investments, you can choose to set your accounts receivable to whatever you want. So let's just set that to 0 for the moment. And let's just set your accounts payable to 0 for the moment. And I go back into those financial reports. And you can now see that the project starts in July with some upfront rent and then ongoing rent. And so you're short $15,000 by the time you get into September. But then in September, you start to generate revenue, and your revenue less your expenses generates $52,000 in positive cash flow, which then when you take that $52,000 at the end of September and look at your statement of cash flows, it shows you that you got $52,000 in positive cash flow coming in, and therefore you end up with $37,000 in the bank at the end of the first month.
Now, I'm not seeing the monthly cost of salaries in there.
Let me go back and see what we did. 75 classroom staffing, 18,000. Go to the income statement. So isn't that in here? You have 23. You have 18,000, which is your monthly cost of staffing, plus 5,000 for your rent. Isn't that 23,000?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Right.
that's
and so
it.
that's
So it's
all.
showing
What
up
we do is
there.
yeah.
By the way, we have our first comment. Renata Faccioli says to everyone, this is great. Thank you for saying this presentation. I've been stalling creating an actual business plan as it is not my forte. I'm so eager to plug in the information for my many pages of brainstorms and project the list into StratPad so I can share it with my much more business-oriented family. Thank you, Renata.
Well,
That's great. That's exactly why I wanted to share this.
great. And Renat, aren't you going to look like a hero to your family, and really smart when you can produce a completely integrated set of financial pro formas? You're a genius.
And if you choose to use QuickBooks, and there's trade-offs we'll talk about QuickBooks versus say a daycare software like ProCare, which does bookkeeping as well and is not, I assume, integrated in with StratPad. There are pros and cons, and you'll have to decide what's more important to you. And I don't have a quick answer, but what I really like is the possibility of seeing actuals versus my projections, because that saves a lot of time in having to transpose information over to see whether what I think is going to happen, whether it's really happening.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I wish I could tell you folks that the reality was going to look this positive. I think in reality, it's going to be more costly than what we're showing. The other side is, as you can see, that when you start, if you can get your tuition up as high as $1,000 in US dollars and keep your cost of of the salaries as low as I projected. Now, keep in mind, there's no secretary, there's no pay for you yet, there's no utilities, there's no lawyers' fees, there's no insurance. The bottom line is at 75 students, if you can get a decent tuition and keep your salaries under control, and they're not going to be as low as I've given you, because you're probably going to be open at 7 in the morning and you're going to close at 6 o'clock at night. So you're going to need someone else. You're going to have the issue of, do I give my staff any kind of lunch break or a bathroom break? And who's going to do that? What about substitutes? Your profit's going to start getting whittled down. But the beauty of this is you can start to see how you build one of these plans. And just as easily, if you have an ongoing school like Newgate is getting ready to begin the first steps of expanding from 125 students to adding on buildings and more staff, and obviously picking up debt, assuming we can't get it donated. We have to do the exact same thing on a day-to-day process, just as you would if you're starting a brand new school. This is useful at any point in the life cycle of a business. Well, wow, we've gone through an hour. Is there anything, Alex, that you want to share that we haven't covered already?
Well, there's just take a second here. Yeah, we've covered off the basics. If you're able to get through this, I think you've got a real good start. And then the rest, as you've said, is going back through here, creating perhaps a different scenario. And I'll just, well, I won't show you how to do it because I think we're out of time. But the other thing is that we have twice a week webinars that are free, and they last from 30 to 45 minutes each. And so as you get into StratPad, feel free to sign up to those and feel free to ask your questions. We'll go through some of this stuff again, but then we stay as long as we need to in order to answer any of the questions. And a lot of the times we have very specific questions about specific issues. The last thing I'll show you is that, and I'm going to go to I can't see it in this version. Let me go over to this here. Pardon me. The last thing I want to show you is that anywhere in StratPad, you will have a question mark at the top that accesses help, but you'll also have this little Talk to Us button here. And when you click that Talk to Us button, you can now ask us, make a suggestion, report a bug, ask a question, leave a comment. You can ask us any question you like. And when you click send, this goes right into our internal customer support systems, and we'll get back to you within an hour or two with an answer. So get in here, take a look at it. You can share information back and forth with each other. We can do these types of things again, and just enjoy it. Don't be scared of it.
Alex, this has just been so kind of you to take your own personal time as CEO of the company to jump in on short notice. Darren, thank you for suggesting that we do this. We will take a look at this further on my StratPad account. If folks have more questions and want to do more webinars that are specific to the setting up of Montessori schools. And Alex, I thank you so much for reaching out. I know that your office extended some kind of trial account for people to get a sense of what it's like. And I certainly have no problem recommending to schools that they really jump on to StratPad.
Well, great. Yeah, thanks, Tim. And if I know you have the coupon code, and feel free to share that with anyone that's on the call right now.
I will. Alex, thanks for your time. Thanks to everyone else for joining us. Please feel free to comment about this in the course forums or by emailing me or calling me directly. Look forward to talking to you all about the development of your programs. And for all of you who are going to be listening later, after I've posted the recording to the various course websites, we'll be speaking more about what you're learning from this and what you'd like to hear next. Alex, thanks again for joining us. It's been great.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Talk
This,
to you again.
this Tim Selden from the Montessori Foundation and the Montessori Leadership Institute, summer of 2014. Thank you very much for joining us and have a great, great day.